Am I way off base on time? Guess I'm early. Huh. Oh, yeah. Guess that's about as far away as I can get. Where is everybody? Somebody ought to be chiming in by now. Phew. Good, 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 good. Good morning. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry I missed last week. I got called away for work.
Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
I can't for sure say what I'm doing because I signed a non-disclosure agreement, but for many it's a good thing.
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
you work for the CIA? I didn't know.
No, but I signed something and I can't say what, but it's a good thing.
Okay.
So I've been working 8 to 6 every day, and including weekends.
A friend of mine back in the dark ages, when we were at the University of Arkansas, working on our degrees, but also teaching, he said, had some kid come in, and my friend was prone to joking. And the guy looked like he had had a rough night. And my friend jokingly said, "What'd you do? Spend the night in jail?" Uh-huh. It was funny at the time. Mandy, your image froze. No, you're moving again.
I'm at work and our internet connection's kind of iffy.
Okay. For the
So,
final exam, which is 2 weeks
but
from...
I just came back over here. I'm at somewhere else at the moment.
Okay. For the final exam, can you get in a location where the internet connection is not iffy?
Yeah.
Good. Good morning, guys. Hampton, Enoch.
Morning.
Enoch. He stepped away. Enoch.
Hi, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Does your camera work?
Yes.
Why don't you test it, if you don't mind? I have a reason.
Okay, I hear. I'm testing.
I just want to be sure it works. And Mandy, your image is frozen again.
Okay. Good morning, Doc.
Good
Okay,
morning.
yeah, sure. So,
Still don't
can you see me now?
No. Now I can see you. Well, I see a still shot of you. Now you're moving. Okay. You can turn it off now. I just needed to know you had one that worked. I'll explain a little bit later during the meeting this morning.
Okay, that's good.
John?
Okay, all right. Okay.
Good morning. Do you have a camera that, there you go. Okay. You can turn it off if you want to. I just need to make sure your camera works.
When are we gonna have to sign up for ProctorU for the final exam?
That's part of what I'm going to talk to you about. What I would like to do is finish up chapter 11 first, and then take the remaining minutes to talk to you about what I'm thinking about doing for the final exam. Guys, I've got 10 o'clock. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes. There we go. Hutch, good morning. Carmen.
Good morning, Mr. Codd.
Good morning. Carmen?
Yes.
Would you test your camera? Would you turn it on to make sure it works?
It does. I just used it on my previous class.
Okay. Hutch?
Yes.
Would you turn your camera on to make sure it works? Yeah, good. You can turn it off now if you want to, or, put up whatever cartoon image you want. And Enoch, you can turn yours off if you would like. I just needed to make sure you have one that works.
Yeah, so it's off now. Okay, it's off now.
Yes, it's off now. Okay, guys, let's, Haley, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's continue. What I want to do is finish off chapter 11 and then talk to you about changes for the final exam. Big changes for me, anyway. Okay. We had gone through all of the capital budgeting methods. And now we need to talk about some other things. Reinvestment rate assumptions. Whether you realize it or not, with each of those techniques, those four methods, payback, NPV, IRR, MIRR, you implicitly made an assumption about the time value of money. You know, with each of those projects, you invest money now, and then in the years in the future, you get money back, cash back. But the question is, when you get the cash back, what do you do with it then? With the payback method, we ignored the time value of money. So we implicitly assumed its time value of money is 0%. By the way, another name for that, for the time value of money, is the assumed reinvestment rate. Same thing. By the way, ignore PI, just ignore it. With the NPV and with the WACC, with the NPV and the MIRR, our assumed time value of money was the cost of capital. You know, with the NPV, that was your discount rate. And with the MIRR, your second or first step, whichever way you want to look at it, you were to find the future value of the cash inflows, and we use the WACC as our interest rate. So with both of these methods, our assumed time value of money was the WACC. Now, what was not so clear was the IRR method, simply because of how you calculate it. With the IRR, you assume your time value of money is the project IRR. For instance, for project S, we had an IRR of 14.5%. So that was our assumed time value of money. Meaning that when the cash flows from the project started coming back in, those cash inflows were reinvested in something else that also earned a 14.5% rate of return. So, to recap, the payback ignores the time value of money. It treats the project as if when the cash flows come in, you, bury them in a shoebox in the yard. You don't do anything with them. You don't reinvest them to earn any return. With the NPV and MIRR, you assume your time value of money is the WACC, the cost of capital. With the IRR, you assume, whether you realize it or not, simply because of how it's calculated, pardon me. You assume the time value of money for a project is its IRR. For instance, with project S, which cost $1,000, a year from now, you expect to get 500 back. When you calculate the IRR, you assume you take that first 500 and reinvest it in something else that also gives you a 14.5% rate of return. So if I ask you on a test, which of the 4 capital budgeting methods has the same assumed time value of money or the same assumed reinvestment rate? The answer would be the NPV and the MIRR. If I ask you on a test, which of the 4 capital budgeting techniques ignores the time value, ignores the time value of money, sorry guys, which of the techniques ignores the time value of money? Payback. We don't consider the time value of money. And finally, which of the techniques assumes the reinvestment rate is equal to the project IRR? And that's what? The IRR technique. So we got 4 techniques. 3 of them consider all the cash flows. They consider the time value of money. And they also have a decision rule designed to maximize shareholder wealth. The one technique that is so flawed that its decision rule is arbitrary, it ignores the time value of money. That's the payback method. Okay, I beat that to death. Sometimes it's useful to create what is called an NPV profile graph. With an NPV profile graph, the vertical axis, the up axis, is NPV, and the horizontal or x-axis is the interest rate. So here's NPV, that's our vertical axis. Here's our cost of capital. And for project S, with a cost of capital of 10%, we got an NPV of a positive 78.8 million. That was actually this point. If we want to construct an NPV profile graph, what we do is we try different values for the WACC and see what NPV it gives us. For instance, if we tried a WACC of 5%, a lower discount rate, we get a lot higher NPV. And that's this point. And if we assume the cost of capital was 0, we'd get an even higher NPV, and that would be this point. So basically, to construct an NPV profile graph, you try different values for your cost of capital and see what the NPV values are, and then you connect the dots. You draw a line to connect the dots. One thing you should observe, and this makes a great test question. Let me change that. With a higher value for your cost of capital, the NPV goes down. And that gives you a downward sloping NPV profile. Let me say that again. With higher values for your cost of capital, you get lower NPVs. And that's why this line slopes downward. And there is another special point. This intercept point, that's the value for WACC that forces the NPV to be 0. And by another name, we call that the IRR. So what? 3 things. As you use a higher cost of capital, you get lower NPVs. That's why the line slopes downward. And this point of intercept is the project IRR. I will not have you construct an NPV profile graph, but I may ask you questions about how to interpret it, such as the ones that I just gave you. And you'll notice that if we put both projects, way back on slide number 2, I think it was, we've got slide 3, we've got the cash flows for Project S and Project L. If we were to construct an NPV profile graph for both, which line is steeper? S or L? L is steeper. That means 2 things. For one, the NPV of Project L is more sensitive to the value for WACC. That is, as we increase WACC, the NPV for L falls faster than it does for Project S. And the other thing that suggests is that the bigger cash flows for Project L are further off in the future. if the bigger cash flows are further off in the future, or for that matter, if L were a longer term project, then its NPV would fall faster. If you go, I'm not going to do it here, but if you go back to slide 3, look at the cash flow pattern for projects S and L. S's big cash inflows come early, 500 and 400 come the first 2 years. Then they get smaller over time. But with project L, the bigger cash flows, 400, 600, occur further off in the future. So if you have a project that's either longer term or has its big cash inflows further off in the future, it will have a steeper NPV profile line. Another concept that we didn't yet cover is the concept of independent versus mutually exclusive projects. For example, let me go to the whiteboard for this. What I've got 2 projects. I've got project S, which has an NPV of 78.8. Project L has, if you were to crank it out, an NPV of 43.8. And for that matter, if we cranked out the IRR for each, for S, it's 14.5%. For L, it was 15.9%. Now, if S and L are independent, if they're independent projects, what that means is one project has nothing to do with the other. It means the projects are unrelated. For instance, one project might be to start manufacturing a new product, maybe a razor blade that's got curved edges or something. And another project might be to start buying raw materials from a supplier in India or something. If the projects are independent, that means they're unrelated. You evaluate each separately. Now, if they're independent, what's your decision on project S? Would you accept it or reject it? By the way, those are The NPVs are dollar figures. If S and L are independent projects, we evaluate both separately. We'd accept S because, terrible writing, for one thing, the NPV of S is greater than 0. And of course, the IRR will be in agreement. I believe the WACC for these projects was, well, actually, for S, the WACC was 10%, and for Y it was for L, it was, actually, I didn't give it to him. Well, let's assume the WACC for S was 10%. It was. And just for grins, let's assume the WACC for L was 12. I believe that is what we used. So if the projects are independent, we evaluate them separately. We accept S because the NPV is greater than 0. And for that matter, the IRR for S is greater than its cost of capital. For project L, we would also accept L. If they're independent, we evaluate them separately. And we would accept L because the NPV for L is positive, it's greater than 0. And the IRR for L is greater than its cost of capital. Key point is, in this particular case, if these projects are independent, we accept both projects. We evaluate them separately. Both of them look good. So we'd accept both. Now, what does it mean if the projects are mutually exclusive? Give me a second here. So if I go in circles, it gets bigger. How about that? I just learned something. If S and L are what we call mutually exclusive, what that means is both projects serve the same purpose. Or more specifically, we can only accept one of the two projects. So we need to rank the projects. To see which one's better. Now, I didn't put payback, I didn't put MIRR up there. I just went with NPV and IRR. But what do you notice? Which of the projects is the better project based on NPV? S or L? Project S, isn't it? It's got a bigger NPV. Which of the projects is the better project based on IRR? Project L. For independent single projects, the NPV and the IRR will always be in agreement. Where they can disagree is when you're trying to rank projects. And if you're trying to rank projects to see which is the better, you go with the NPV. So we would rank what is it, SS, as the better project. So we choose project S. And we reject project L. Now, what would it mean if two projects were mutually exclusive? That is, they serve the same purpose. What if a company has a factory on a waterway, they're on a river, and they need to be able to transport their goods across the river? One thing they could do is build a bridge. Another thing they could do is invest in some barges and ferry their goods across the river. But they wouldn't do both. That would be an example of mutually exclusive projects. Or for instance, what if you have a company and they need a new fleet of trucks? They could invest in less expensive trucks that won't last as long, or they could invest in more expensive trucks that would last longer, but they wouldn't do both. Anyway,
Mr. Could,
ma'am,
can you explain again the how you choose like project as because the MPV?
if we have projects that are mutually exclusive, we go with the NPV. We ignore how all of the other methods rank the projects. We ignore the IRR, the payback, the MIRR. We go with the project with a higher NPV. Let me give you an example. What if I offer you the choice of two bank accounts? Account A will pay a 5% interest rate. Account B will pay a 10% interest rate. Now, the interest rate, the rate of return, that's like IRR. Without any more information, you would go with account B. But what if I now tell you with account A that'll pay 5%, you can invest as much money as you want With account B, you can only invest $10. If you have to choose between the two, you'd rather earn 5% on an unlimited amount of money than 10% on just $10. The IRR captures the rate of return per dollar invested. It does not account for how many dollars are invested. The NPV captures both of the effects. The NPV actually captures the effect of your rate of return and how many dollars are invested to earn that rate of return. So if you've got to rank projects to see which one is better, use the NPV method and nothing else. Did that get close to answering your question, Carmen?
I mean, sort of, because as I
tried.
just got confused because the MPV on S is smaller than the one in L.
That's why we're choosing S.
Okay. Now I know why. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah, it's real simple. If you've got to rank projects to see which one is better, simply use the NPV, choose the project with a bigger NPV.
Okay.
Okay. Final little concept, and then we'll be done with this. Well, there we go. Got to hit it harder. Is the concept of normal versus non-normal cash flow patterns. A normal cash flow pattern is one like project S or L. Your only outflow is at the start. And your cash flows change signs one time. For instance, for project S, I would try to draw on the whiteboard, but it is such, I mean the slides, but it is such a pain. For project S, cash flows were a negative 1,000, then 500, whoops, 500, 400, 300, 100. That is a normal cash flow pattern. Why? For one thing, the only outflow is at t equals 0. That was their only outflow. And secondly, the cash flows change sign once, only once. From year 0 to year 1, They go from negative to positive, and then they stay positive. I think the easiest way for you to remember is the only outflow is at t equals 0. So that's a normal cash flow pattern. What would a non-normal cash flow pattern be? It would be one where you've not only got outflows at the start, but you've got them at some point in the future. And believe it or not, that creates some problems when you try to analyze the projects. For instance, one problem with non-normal cash flow patterns is you can get multiple IRR solutions. If you put this into your calculator, it might give you more than one IRR. By definition, the IRR is the discount rate that forces the NPV to equal 0. In fact, if we tried to graph this, if we tried to, for different values for the cost of capital, calculate the NPV, we would find that a WACC of 25%, we get a 0 NPV, but also 400%. I'll make you a deal you can't refuse, okay? Let's back up. How can you identify a non-normal cash flow pattern? There's not only an outflow at the start, there is at some point in the future. Whereas with a normal cash flow pattern, the only outflow is at the start. All the problems we've been working, and any that you would have to work out of the book, they all involve normal cash flow patterns. Something else key for you to remember, and I'm backing up to put emphasis on stuff. If you have mutually exclusive projects where you have to rank them, what's the only method you should use to rank competing projects? The NPV method. All right. Just for grants, try this this project. Oh, come on. There we go. Project M has the following cash flows. At time 0, the cash flow is a negative 500. Then at time 1, the cash flow is 300, well, actually 300 each year. The WACC for M is 8%. Find the payback, the NPV, the IRR, and the MIRR. Take a few minutes and see what you get. Well, let's walk through it. I'm not a patient professor. For the payback, we've got a cost of 500 and cash inflows of 300 a year every year. So we want to make a cumulative cash inflow column. After 1 year, we've recovered 300. Do we need to go all the way through year 2 to hit our recovery point where we've recovered 500? No. So our payback would be 1 year plus how much more do we need to recover? Another, what, 200? So our payback would be 1 2/3 years, 1.67 years. If this company's cutoff for the payback for investing was 3 years, we would accept this project because the payback for the project, if only I could write and speak. Might as well be able to sing. What if I could sing? If the payback for the project is well less than the cutoff, we would accept. We expect to recover our investment in less than 2 years. All that's required for acceptance is we recover it in less than 3. So the payback would say this looks like a great project. If we were to try to find the NPV, I know you've got different calculators, but using the BA2 plus, you'd hit CF shift clear. The first cash flow at time 0 is a negative 500. Then you have 300. 3 years in a row. Hit NPV, it asks for your discount rate. In this case, it's 8. And this would give us an NPV for this project of, if these were in millions, the NPV would be 273 mil, a positive 273 mil. Since the NPV, what was I writing, is positive, would accept. And at this point, if we wanted the IRR, and we had already put all the cash flows into the calculator, we could then just hit IRR, compute. And it would give us an IRR. I got 36.3%. And we would accept based on the IRR because the IRR is a lot bigger than our WACC. Our WACC is 8% and our IRR is over 36. Then finally, to calculate the MIRR, we'd find the present value of just the inflows. Again, using the BA2 plus, we hit CF shift clear. It prompts us for the cash flow. At time 0, there's not one. It's an outflow. So we'd put 0 in. Then it prompts us for the next cash flow, which is an inflow. And it occurs 3 times in a row. And then to solve for NPV, we'd give it the cost of capital, ask it to compute, and we would get the present value of our inflows of 773.1. Then we would compound that forward to the final year to find the future value of the inflows. We would compound that single lump so 773.1 forward to the final year, and we'd be using the cost of capital as our interest rate. That would give us a future value of, I'm getting 973.9. And then our last step, we've got a project where we put in 500, and after 3 years, we end up with 973.9. And that gives us a rate of return of 24.9%, and that would be the project's MIRR. And we would accept because the MIRR is greater than the WACC. First question, how many of you got my figures? Anybody?
I did.
Was that a yes or a no, Haley?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I got him.
Cool. Hampton, okay, good. Now, that's it for chapter 11. Okay, let me tell you what I'm thinking about doing. And a friend suggested this, and I should have asked him if he has done it. But this is what I'm thinking about doing for your final exam. Oh, come on. Well, stop. Go. My whiteboard's giving me grief for a second, for some reason. There we go. This is what I'm thinking about doing. I'm thinking about ignoring, bypass, whatever you want to call it, Proctor U. And actually monitoring the exam myself. Hold a Zoom meeting. Where the prof, that's me, will observe the students during the exam. Now, to do this, you must have a working microphone and camera. I'm going to send an email out to this effect a little later to everybody. But a downside to this is instead of having notes cards, no memory aids. I will create a formula sheet. I'll create a note sheet myself. On that formula sheet, obviously, I'll put all the formulas you would use. I will put some identifying definitions, and I will send it to you probably Thursday. And then you can make suggestions about what else I could add to it. But the downside is you won't be able to create your own memory aid. You'll have to use the one I create. Now, why am I thinking about doing this? I corresponded with ProctorU this weekend, and they're not handling all this extra volume very well. They would like me to set up the exam with maybe a 3 or 4 day window where you call in or you contact them and reserve a time to take your exam. Well, I do that with my other classes I have for years. But with the other exams, their questions and problems are randomly generated from a pool of questions and problems. And even that would not be a problem, except in corresponding with one of their consultants, I got the impression you could end up with the only time that could be available might be 2 a.m., absurd times. I contacted them about your exam, which is Monday morning, the 4th, May the 4th. And they said every time slot through the middle of the afternoon had already been taken. I thought they were going to hire more proctors, and they probably have. But their solution to the increased demand by all these universities giving exams online, their solution has been to, instead of hiring and training more people, their solution is to give you very inconvenient exam times. And at the suggestion of one of the other profs, actually Chris Smith, and he spoke of this as if he had done it. He thinks it might be simpler for us all to take the exam as scheduled at 8 o'clock Monday morning, May the 4th. And at the same time, create a Zoom session. So basically, I am the proctor. I will observe you as you take your exam. Questions?
Are we gonna have
Where is our exam gonna be? Like on what format?
Moodle.
Okay.
You log into the Moodle page. First, you enter the Zoom session. And if you want, I guess, minimize that. Then enter Moodle and click on Final Exam.
So since we're not going to be able to have like a memory aid, are we going to be allowed to have like paper to work out the problems on?
You
or
are allowed to have blank scratch sheets to work your problems out on. Yeah.
will we need to like come on Zoom and show you that they're blank before we start the test? Or
I don't know if I'll be as, my vocabulary fails me. I don't think I'll be as strict as Proctor U, but I might ask you to hold up the sheets. Just, I should. So Hampton, the answer is yes. I'll probably ask you to show me that they're.
So is this all the chapters that we covered, or do we still have more to go over?
This is all the chapters since exam number 2. I think it's 5 chapters. It's stock valuation, risk, and the 3 chapters that deal with capital budgeting, cost of capital, capital budgeting methods, and also chapter 12, which I haven't covered yet. We'll start on it Wednesday, which reminds me, bring your slides to chapter 12, would you, Wednesday? Now, I'm going to send you a copy of a proposed formula sheet. It may be several pages long. I'm going to put a ton of stuff on it. What will not be on it will be example problems.
The week before the exam, are you going to do like a review session, or
Well, I
are
tell
we
you
not
what, we've got
having
3
class
class meetings left. I think 2 will be sufficient to cover chapter 12. So that last meeting, which would be Wednesday of next week, I can do whatever you want.
Okay.
I know it's a curveball, guys, but I'm having to choose the lesser of the evils right now. Proctor U's response suggested it would be a train wreck to try to use them. I think this will, I know for sure this will be less irritating than going through their 30+ minute vetting process where you pan the room with your camera, show them 2 picture IDs. I pretty much know who you are, so. Anything else? That is all that I was going to cover today. If you have no other questions, I'll see you Wednesday, and bring your slides for chapter 12. And all of you attending did check your, Haley, I didn't ask you to, but your camera does work, right?
Yes, sir, it does. Sometimes I have problems with it. I had problems in one of my last exams because I'm having to use an old laptop because my current one broke. So every once in a while it goes off and I just have to restart it. But other than that, it works.
You have to do a reboot?
It's just like it'll turn off and then I have to go on the Zoom thing and hit start video again.
Okay.
That's all that I had to do in my last exam.
If it happens during the final exam, I will work with you. I might have to go in and do something to Moodle to let you back in, but
Oh,
we'll work
okay.
with that.
Okay.
Anything else, guys? You may like this better than dealing with ProctorU. They can be very irritating, and this time, oh my, they're not handling the volume well at all. Okay, I'll see you guys Wednesday. Stay safe.